We'd like to introduce you to talk a little bit about yourself to our global investment immigration guests.
Sure. Well, thank you first off. Thank you very much for having me. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity, and we've had a great conference so far. So I'm very, very happy to be on the program, and thank you for taking the time. So my name is Bill Gresser. I'm the president and a founder of EB-5 New York State. And EB-5 New York State is what's known as a regional center under the EB-5 program, and we help people, we help families come to the U.S., receive a U.S. green card through making an investment in the U.S. And we've been doing it now for over 10 years. I'm also the vice president of the National Trade Association for EB-5 regional centers. I'm the vice president of a group called Invest in USA, which is the largest trade association of regional centers in the U.S. So that's a little background on me.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
So we know there is up to 15 years backlog from China, and India is soon to hit retrogression. Are you guys a victim of your own success?
I would say that the industry is a victim of its own success, undoubtedly. But I do think that there is a bit of a distinction. So with our company, when we started about 10 years ago, we first had investors from Korea, primarily. And then for a few years, primarily from China. But we were concerned by the concentration of investors from China. So we made a conscious decision to reduce the number from China. We're about 25% or 30% of our investors are from India. About 25 to 30% of our investors already live in the United States. And the rest of our investors are from the balance of the world. I believe over 90 countries right now. So retrogression in China is very, very real. It's very true. The estimates are now about 15-year wait. And you're right, it's a victim of success. As to India, it is not retrogress currently. It may retrogress. If India retrogresses, it will mean a slight backlog for a short period of time, and then it will become current, and then a slight backlog for a period of time, and then it will become current. And these are speculation. No one knows for certain. So it'll probably be a few years before it permanently retrogresses. So it'll be interesting to see, but at the current time, for Indian investors, it's known as the visa status is current. So Indian investors should invest now in order to position themselves as well as possible if the Indian nationality retrogresses in the future.
Indians love migrating abroad, especially
Right.
to places like the USA, Canada, and the UK. They're their favourites.
Right.
I'm an Indian investor.
Yes.
So I'm going to say, Bill, I want to take my family to the USA.
Absolutely.
What do I need, and what can you do for me?
Sure, sure. No, that's an excellent question, and I'll tell you from the Indian perspective, we have a tremendous amount of experience. So there are several types of Indian investors from India. There are investors in India who have made cash, and they want primarily their children to go to school in the U.S.
Yeah.
That is 90% of Indian investors, their objective is for their family, and especially their children to go to university in the U.S. And after being in university, they want their children to be able to stay in the U.S. and work. In the U.S., it's very hard to get in. And India is, in particular, a number of categories are difficult. But for EB-5, again, it's still current. So it's a wonderful opportunity. So you have individuals who've made money in India. The second group of Indian investors are children already in U.S. schools. So the mother and father have sent their child, and he or she is, let's say, first year of university. In order for that child to stay in the U.S. and work after they graduate, they need to have a visa status. They need to have a way, and EB-5 is a way. So the child, maybe first or second year of college, the child applies as an investor, and then they can stay afterwards once they have their green card to the U.S. And the third type of Indian investor is the person who's already there, and he or she is a professional. And we have, again, probably 25 to 30% of our investors actually live in the U.S. They have an H-1B, they're a physician, they work on Wall Street, they're in the high-tech sector, and they need to have certainty that they can stay in the U.S. It is becoming more common that we have investors who are Indian that already live in the U.S. under a different visa category, and we help all of them. We have a significant amount of experience with Indian investors for many years. And how do we help them? We understand why they want to come to the US or stay. We understand the Indian currency laws and the need and the ability to transfer funds out of India, which can be extremely complicated at some instances.
That's right.
And then we help them by providing them with projects that have a great deal of certainty of meeting the EB-5 requirements, creating the jobs so they get a visa, and then having those investors eventually repaid. We're one of the few regional centers who have investors that have unconditional green cards for the whole family and have been repaid their entire investment in full. So that is what we do for investors from all over, but in particular, we have a great deal of experience with investors from India.
Essentially, if they do get their money back,
Right.
then we're getting the visas for free.
Right. You always, any investor must make an investment. Under US law, it must be an at-risk investment. However, we structure them to have as great a likelihood as we can that they will eventually be repaid. So I agree with you. If you look at it in that long term, it is essentially a free investment, maybe the cost of the time value of money, but essentially a free investment, yeah, and they get it back. That's subjective.
And what sets your project apart from the 800 other projects which we've been talking to and been told about,
right.
And
Well,
the real estate and
Sure.
you know, so what sets you apart? I mean, how can you be so sure of saying, Harjap, well, you know, Renato, we're not going to lose. I'm not going to lose your money, and you're going to get your green card, because everyone talks in ifs, buts, and maybes.
Yeah.
There's a very, you know, there's a lack of certainty. But how can
Right.
Bill say, right, you know what, this is definitely going to happen?
Actually, it's interesting you say that, Harjab, because no one can say it will definitely happen. So I'm an attorney. I don't practice law in this area. I'm also registered with certain securities laws in the United States. And I know you cannot say with certainty, it is against US law for me to make a guarantee, either of the repayment or the eventual granting of the visa. If I do that, it would violate the provisions of the EB-5 program. But I can say to you, we absolutely believe you will receive a green card and be repaid. And that's as much as we really can say. Now, why do I say that? Well, again, we've been doing this for over 10 years. We have investors that have gone all the way through the process from start to finish, from applying and having a great deal of angst, consternation, concern, they're nervous on the front end, to eventually in the back end having a green card for the whole family and then being repaid. We have had projects in many sectors. We have construction projects, we have hospital projects. We recently finished raising capital for a children's hospital in upstate New York. We have real estate developments in New York City. So we aren't a developer doing a particular project. What we do is we look for projects that we believe will meet the requirements of the EB-5 program. We'll create the jobs so the investors get visas, and then we'll be repaid. They're not investing in our project. They're using our expertise and experience to help identify projects which should meet their needs. Today, we may have a hotel project. Tomorrow, it may be a different one, but it has the same criteria. Qualified, experienced developers with very good projects. So why would they invest with us? 10 years of experience and the success helping investors, regardless of the type of project.
Bill, there are some exciting projects on
Right.
offer through the EB-5 program.
There are.
How should an investor proceed to ascertain which projects to invest in?
That's a great question. EB-5, we have 3 objectives. The first objective is job creation so that you get a green card. The second is repayment. We want to work as hard as possible for the repayment of your entire investment. And then the third is a return on your investment. As an investor, the first thing you should look at is the project, and that is people. Who are the people doing this project, both from the regional center, but the development side? At the end of the day, you're making an investment into a business. If that business fails, you may not get the immigration benefit you want. So look closely at that business. Does it make sense? After you feel that there's a degree of comfort, at the same time, you should have a very good U.S. attorney experienced in EB-5. And that is an individual that he or she can look at this and say, you know what, that business investment you like also meets the requirements of the EB-5 program. So it's a business that meets the program immigration requirements. That's how I would start to look at it. Look at the business first. Then there's nuances. Is it, how certain are you that the jobs will be created? Well, with construction projects, we have a great deal of certainty. So there are lots and lots of nuances, but at the end of the day, is the thing you're investing in, does it make sense? Is it a good project? How low is the risk that this project will go forward and create jobs? That's how I would start. Always look at the project, always look at the people.
Okay. Can you explain the role of a broker-dealer in EB-5
Sure.
transactions?
Sure. So when you make an EB-5 investment, you're purchasing a security under U.S. securities laws. And it's really important. Many people in the past have said, well, this isn't really a security for certain reasons. It is. And as a result, it has to comply with U.S. securities laws. Broker-dealers are becoming much more common in the industry. So we only work with broker-dealers. And a broker-dealer is a person licensed by the Securities and Exchange Commission or FINRA or another organization like that. Their role is to do background diligence on me, do background to check and make sure that we have no financial or criminal or other issues. Their role is to do a background check on the development. Who is this developer? Is this a good project? Does it make sense financially? And then the third thing they do is they vet the individual investors, which is actually really important. One investor wants to feel certain to a degree that any other investor has also been vetted, that they're a good person, that their funds come from a legitimate source. So broker-dealers are much more important in today's environment than ever in the past. And as U.S. laws change, they will become even more important. And as an example, for example, we have our projects audited. So all projects going forward have an independent audit, also required by broker-dealers. So it's a level of oversight, it's a level of control, and it provides a level of certainty and security for the investor. Most investors never meet me, but knowing that an independent third party licensed by a U.S. government or a government agency has reviewed the project and has a degree of oversight and control is extremely important. And we only use broker-dealers, so.
Bill, what are the processing times? We hear a lot of stories about processing times.
Right.
And people, when they give you money, they want something now.
Yeah.
You can't blame the
No.
world for that. The Americans created that culture when they made drive-throughs. So, if we pay you half a billion,
Right?
how quick can you turn it around
Sure.
for us? And say if we're from India or look for China, they've got
Right.
huge waiting
They
lists.
do.
Right. So are we going to have to wait 15 years for our visa, or are we going to have to wait 10 years for our visa?
Yeah.
And what should be the processing time?
Right.
And are you lobbying the government? And is the government doing anything about it? Surely when there's a backlog,
That's
it's
a
the government's
great-
duty to speed stuff up.
That's a
People
great
like you
point.
should be saying, well, hold on,
We
you're
are.
killing our business.
No, you're very true. No, that's excellent. So when we started in this business, I used to be able to say to people, in 1 year,
Yeah.
you and your family will be in the United States. Well, now it's more like 2 years. But truthfully, no one can give a guarantee because at the end of the day, it's a U.S. government agency that has to approve you. You can't force them to do anything earlier, right? Or long. So you can't say with that degree of certainty that we know. Now, your other point, which is, shouldn't we be lobbying the government? And we do on a very regular basis, not only in Congress, but actually more importantly is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the agency that oversees what we do. And repeatedly for years we've said, please, you have to make the waiting time shorter. So they've recently come out and said it is part of their objective is to shorten waiting times. So hopefully they will shorten. Whether they will in reality, I don't know. There's actually a second point though. U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services approves your application. It's actually the U.S. State Department that grants the visa. So the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services may approve it quickly, even as a Chinese person. But as a Chinese person, you may have to wait 15 years to get the visa. Wow. Now, that's only Chinese people right now. But U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is quickening it. But as to receiving the visa as a Chinese person, even if USCIS moves fast, the State Department is still limited. They are constrained by the number of visas. So as a Chinese person, there's a wait to get the visa. Does that make sense?
I think people just want to be made sure that immigrants aren't being lumped into one category with
Oh,
the
yeah.
current situation
Oh, yeah.
along the world.
Right.
A business investor is a serious person. He's not your typical visitor.
Very true.
He's not your spouse.
Very
Yeah,
true.
he's not your dependent.
Right.
So surely he should be given priority. I mean,
Yeah.
other countries have a priority service,
Yeah.
and they have a quick turn. 15 years for a visa.
But it's
turnaround.
only for Chinese people
Yeah.
on the 15 years. But no, that's really true. So what do? So in the US, the EB-5 category means it's current.
Yeah.
If I'm an Indian investor,
Yeah.
it may take me an extremely long period of time to get another visa category to the US. So it may seem lengthy, but yet in reality for the US, it isn't long at all compared to many other ways to come in. So, and it is as in comparison then, it is relatively expedited compared to the other ones, and you're right. An EB-5 investor is extremely good for the US. He or she is investing, he or she is creating new US jobs, all of this at no cost to the US government. And the government recognizes this. So EB-5 investors are generally considered differently than many other classes of immigration. And the US government talks about making fewer immigrants in many classes or removing certain classes. They're not doing that with EB-5. So, okay, so it's better if you can invest as an EB-5 investor, it's better than many other categories to get into the US.
Would it be prudent to plan ahead in that case? Is that what you're saying? So at least
Absolutely.
give it to, if you're from India and you're thinking of in say 4 or 5 years' time
Yeah.
to do this, then just get it done now.
That's what I would have to say. Because if you invest today, there's another thing about investing today versus tomorrow, right? If you invest today, everything happens more quickly. You get it done sooner. But the other thing is that the US government can either change the program through legislation, the US Congress, or they can change it through regulation.
Right.
Congress has been trying for years to change the program and would increase the investment amount. The US Citizenship and Immigration Services, a division of Homeland Security, can also change the program by regulation. There are pending regulations which, when published, would increase the investment amount to over $1.3 to $1.8 million.
Wow.
The reason to invest today is to get in there early, to make it so you'll get your visa earlier, but in addition to that is it prevents the possibility of you having to pay 3 times as much. So today, $500,000, once the regulations go in, could be as high as $1.8 million or $1.3 million.
Yeah, you could save $1 million.
You could save $1.5 million to $800,000 savings versus the published amount that was in there. So it's really important that if people want to do this, that they just find a project they like and move forward. And waiting is not a good idea. Okay?
Bill, thank you very much. I think you've answered a lot of questions.
Oh, it's my
and I
pleasure.
think you've waylaid a lot of fears and a lot of anxieties, I think, which people
I
have.
hope so. I hope so.
And
Well, thank you
absolutely.
very, very much for having me. This has been a real honor for me to be on your program, so
Alright.
thank you very
Well,
much.
It's been great, and I
Our
think
pleasure.
yeah, you've explained it well as a layman.
Terrific.
As a layman would want to hear it.
Very
I think your experience with Indians shows
Yeah.
because you say the right things that the
Right,
Indians
right.
want to hear.
Well, Indians are among the smartest individuals who invest in the EB. I have experience from over 90 countries. Indians are savvy business people, and they're extremely hardworking and diligent. We find that in every respect. So we try and be as conscientious as we can. We answer all of the questions. We provide them all the information that we have. And as a result, we've had extremely good success with Indian investors. So
Oh, well,
Yeah.
good luck, Bill.
thank you so
very
much.